Alright guys, my name is Tobin Wagstaff, and Dr. Kim asked me to come here today to talk to you guys about some of the material you guys are learning. So before we get into it, I wanted to just explain who I am. So, thanks. So, I was raised in a military family, so I moved around a lot, but I finished high school in Miami. And I started learning music. That's what I do for a living, is music, as a kid. And in Miami, I was very involved in music there. And then I decided to go to the University of Florida to study music there. And while I was at the University of Florida, in my junior year, I started a nonprofit music school. And I still run that music school today. And I raised a family doing that. There was a lot of really cool stuff that happened along the way. I was on a TV show. Got the tour, got to do a whole bunch of stuff that you guys are studying with radio and recording and digital media and social media stuff. And then a few years ago, I decided to go back to graduate school for music education. And now I'm kind of in a transition where I'm trying to pursue actually starting a music school here in the St. Augustine area. So that's where I'm at in life right now. So that's a little bit of a background of what I've done. I've done things like recording, writing music, producing music. I've done a lot of marketing type things. I've done a lot of that kind of stuff. And so Dr. Kim gave me kind of an overview of what you guys have been studying here. And there's a lot of stuff on here that we can talk about. So I have a good scope of what you guys have been doing. So instead of me talking about myself the whole time or giving you a lecture, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask me questions. And I know you probably don't know a whole lot about me, but you'll probably learn a little bit about me along the way. So, the first question I'm going to ask is, what questions do you have? And if you don't have any, then we'll start talking about something. Go for it.
How did you get into percussion?
Good question. So when I was really young, my parents put me in piano lessons, and that just didn't really stick with me. I was pretty young. I was probably around 6 or 7. I wasn't that interested. And then a few years after that, they put me in guitar, and I really liked guitar, but my teacher was really boring, so I didn't stick with it. And then when I got into elementary school, and I was living in Virginia at the time, they started band programs in elementary school there. In Florida, they started middle school, usually. So my parents said, you're going to be in band, and I was like, dang, because I didn't want to be in band. But they said you could pick your instrument. So they took me to one of these music things where they display and demonstrate all the instruments. And so they went through all the horn instruments, all the wind instruments, and string instruments, and guitars and stuff. I was like, yeah, this is all pretty cool. But what got me really excited is when they started demonstrating the drums. And my dad was like, damn it, because now he has a drummer on his hands, and well, that's what he had to deal with the whole rest of my time living in his house was drums. So that's how I got started with that. So I did band in elementary school, middle school, and high school, college, a bunch of extracurricular stuff. That's what I do for a living, and I'm very fortunate to have done that. That's how I got into percussion. Do you play?
No.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Let's think about maybe some of the topics that I have here. And if you don't mind, I'm going to sit down here because it's just easier for me. So I was looking over a whole bunch of stuff, and there's some really interesting topics here. But one of the things that I was particularly interested in, and I'm kind of curious what you guys think about it, because you're a different generation than I am, of course. There's a whole topic about, is music free? Like, who pays for it? How does it get paid for? Have you guys discussed this in class yet already? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, well, we can talk about it here a little bit. So let's think about it. When you download music or you stream music, how do you think it gets paid for? How does the artist get paid? How do the people who administrate the sites get paid? Like, how do all these things get paid for? What do you guys know? Yeah?
There's, like, if you don't pay for your Spotify subscription, there's ads.
Okay, so if there's ads, so the ads pay for the service, right? Okay, there's other ways this can happen. What are other ways that this happens?
If you buy the service, then you're paying for it monthly usually.
Okay. Yeah?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think it's like all a percentage of like what Spotify gets or like Apple Music, like each service takes a percentage, and then each artist will take a percentage based off of their monthly listens and like probably how many people like download the song and stuff like that, and then it gets like all split up that way. So like basically for every listen,
Right, and to jump the gun a little bit, you can probably imagine, so if the artist gets paid, like, so we're talking about artists, or who's paying, like you as the consumer, you're paying for the service, and then you're talking about how the artist gets paid, right? Well, this is not exactly like how the executives get paid. Who gets paid first? Who do you think gets paid first?
Maybe the artist from his royalties or no?
Who do you think gets paid first? Well, think about it this way. Who has a job here? Probably a lot of you, right? Are you the boss? So you make whatever you make, right? And then you probably have a manager above you. They probably make more than you do, right? I can assume that. And then as you go up and up and up through that whole ladder there, you have somewhere that either is the executive of that business, maybe they're like the general manager, or maybe they're the owner. So in that kind of scheme, instead of thinking of it in terms of who gets paid first, think of it in terms of who do you think gets paid the most? Who gets paid the most? The CEOs. So let's just say hypothetically, what's a label that's really, I don't even know what you guys listen to or what's even popular anymore. You probably, an easy one might be Sony Music. You guys have heard of Sony Music, right? So that's like a real easy one. So I don't know the names of all the people who are the executives there, but whatever artists that are signed under Sony Music, they don't make their money until the CEOs make their money. And also, by the way, the artists that work for Sony, they don't own their music. Did you know that? If you guys pay attention to artist news, this is actually kind of a recent thing. This happened a couple years ago. Taylor Swift, her contract with her record label expired about 2 or 3 years ago. And then if you know anything about this story, I'll just kind of summarize it here. So she had some 10 or 15 years of really great music that all of you guys probably know. Whether you like it or not, that's not what I'm getting into. But you know who she is. So she had this contract for about 10 or 15 years, made a lot of really great music. She didn't own any of it. And you know who still owns it? The company that she worked for. They still own that music. But there was some sort of clause or something where they allowed her to re-record her own music, but the only stipulation was it had to be different than the original way that she recorded it. So she came out with a new album with not necessarily new songs. I haven't listened to it myself, so I can't tell you if there's new music on there or not. But I can tell you that there's a lot of remakes on there, and the remakes that she makes, she finally gets to own. Does that sound messed up? But really? Think about like getting a loan. Who has a car payment here, for example? Just 2, 3 people in here? Who pays rent on their home or where you live, right? Nobody just gave that to you, right? You have to pay somebody so you can have that opportunity to own a car or to have a home to live in, right? Well, these artists, they don't usually come up having money to be able to do their own stuff. They have to pay somebody to get them started. And it's kind of like taking out a bank loan or like a mortgage or a car payment. So they take out a loan to make a record. The artist might have some sort of thing in their contract where they get paid along the way, but they have to fulfill that loan before they get to see royalties on a bigger level and all that kind of stuff. It's just like what I just talked about, a car loan or a mortgage, those sort of things. It's that way. As an artist being signed under your record label, signed, that means you're signing over your rights to your music on whatever the terms you agree on until you fulfill those terms, and then you renegotiate the contract. And every artist has a different situation. Any other questions? Because I could go down a rabbit hole on that kind of stuff. So,
Wait,
yes.
So would you say most record labels own, like kind of have like just like a lock on all the artists? Like they basically don't have any, I wouldn't say creative ability, but they really have to like stay in the lines. Because that was the big thing with Michael Jackson and Sony. Like he wanted out of Sony because they had rights to his music. So is it really just like you're selling your soul almost, kind of?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. From an artist perspective, and from some people like us who listen to the music because we care about the music, we're not thinking about the business side of music when we listen to it.
Right.
We're thinking about the emotional side. We like the song, we like the artist, we like the imagery, whatever it is. So to us, it's very artistic. But you have to keep in mind, on the other side, it's all business. All business. So if it sounds like, what's your name?
Augie.
Alden.
Augie.
What's right?
Augie.
Augie. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Augie. It sounds like you pay attention to a little bit to what's going on in the music world, right? So there was a big thing that happened some years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but Michael Jackson actually used to own all the rights to the Beatles music, the whole catalog. He bought it all when he got wealthier than them. He bought all their music. I don't know why he did it. I never really cared to look it up or anything, but he owned all the Beatles music. Now the Beatles could still perform their music, but they don't own it. So all the royalties from the recordings that they made went to Michael Jackson instead of to the Beatles. Huh? But what you're doing is you're buying and you're selling things, just like you would buy a house and rent it out to somebody. Somebody else might have the use of it, but at the end of the day, you're making money off the person using it. It's like paying rent. It's like having a car payment. Those sort of things. Yeah. But what happened a few years ago, I don't remember who bought it, but after Michael Jackson died, the Beatles catalog ended up going to some sort of estate or something. So an estate is not a person. It's like a legal organization or entity that owns stuff. And then someone or partners own that organization. So something happened, I don't know who bought it, but somebody recently kind of bought it, and I don't remember the situation on it. But these things happen all the time. Like if you wrote a song, right, who are musicians here, just out of curiosity? Who plays anything? Okay, just quickly around the room, what do you play?
Piano.
You?
Piano.
Over here?
Guitar.
Okay. Guitar?
You know, I'm doing
Okay.
voice and I'm learning piano.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just getting an idea of what you guys do. So if anybody in this room wrote a song, you wrote it on a piece of paper, or you recorded it on a phone or any other sort of device, and somebody, like let's say I wanted to buy it from you, I would have you sign a contract and then I would own your song. I could do anything I want with your song. Does that sound like it would suck? Well, what if what if you wrote a song and I paid you $1,000 for it? Maybe it's worth it to you because you're not that attached to the song you wrote for you to have that $1,000, but for me, I know I can take that song and now it's mine, I can do anything I want with it. So if you like the deal and I like the deal, we call that a win-win. And that's what all business pretty much is. Good business anyway. That's good business ethics, is when both parties are agreeable and enjoy what they're doing. Because if it's lopsided in some way, somewhere later, usually there's a dispute of some sort, and that's when lawsuits and different things come about. So who pays for the music? So we talked about the user pays for the music. Now, when you pay for the music, you're not actually paying the artist, except for, actually, I'm going to skip a whole bunch of stuff. If the artist is what we call an indie artist, what that means is they're independent. And I don't know who's independent right now. I mean, some of the more famous people are pretty much independent now because they're famous and they can afford to be. But there's probably a lot of like newer upcoming artists that you guys probably listen to, that when you buy their music, you go to their website, you buy their music from their website, or they have, it's not exactly the same, but it's helpful to them. Let's say my name is Tobin Wagstaff, which it is, and I record something and I put it on Apple Music. Well, what happens is you're going to buy the music from Apple Music, but I get some percentage of that. I have to give some percentage to them. I don't know what exactly what that is because I haven't done that before with Apple Music. But Spotify kind of works in well, no, I think Spotify's a little bit different. Let's just focus on Apple Music. Apple Music will let anybody upload anything as long as they approve it, and people can buy it on there and use that as a store. And Apple gets paid, and the artist or the creator gets paid. Actually, let's call it creator, because it's not. No, it depends on how you look at it. You guys have you guys heard of influencers, content creators? That's kind of a new thing that's been coming out in recent years. That didn't exist when I was growing up. Well, the internet was barely a thing when I was growing up. I'm not really that old, but I got my first computer when I came to college. I didn't have one before that. When I came to college was in 1999. You guys were probably born a little after that? Okay, I'm guessing so. You guys could be my kids. So I got to see it, but the way I grew up was kind of interesting because I got to see us go from, I was born in 1980, and so in 1980, we had cassette tapes. And then it was in 1982, CDs were introduced, but nobody had a CD player. They were kind of expensive. And then MP3s came out in 1991. But even in 1991, people barely had computers. So consumers didn't really have access to music. like in that way. You were still, either you were lucky to have CDs, or most of us had cassette tapes even in the early 90s. The first MP3 player was invented in 1997. That was the first MP3 player. And by the way, Dr. Kim, it was a South Korean who invented it and distributed it around the world, including Americans. Kind of funny, little aside there. Now, when I was going to college, when I was you guys' age, what was really popular at that time was something called Napster. You guys ever heard of Napster? I don't know if Napster still exists. Does it still exist? Probably not. Okay, so what Napster was the first major audio file sharing platform. But the way it worked is you didn't go to a website and download from Google's website or something, whatever music, or Apple Music. You didn't go to their website and download the music. It was from user to user. So this was back in the days when computers were networked in between each other. But there was a software system that connected everybody, kind of like a chat room, or kind of like a social media platform like Facebook or Instagram or something like this, where people can communicate with each other. It was something like that. So on Napster, you could go on there and you could find anything, and it was all completely free. And I wonder how Napster made their money. Maybe they were a publicly traded company, so maybe there was ownership stuff and stocks. I can't remember exactly how that worked out, but here's what happened to Napster. So I show up in 1999 as a freshman, and I got my first computer, and we have high-speed internet for the first time. So guess what I was doing 24/7? Downloading music. Even while I was sleeping, even while I was at class, I found everything. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of songs, nothing more than I could ever listen to. And I started putting them in a hard drive. I'm a musician, okay, so I'm into this stuff. So I started putting them on all these hard drives and stuff that I would never listen to because there's just way too much music. But it was so cool, and I was thinking to myself, one day, this isn't going to be free anymore. I should download everything I can. So that's what I attempted to do, and I found some really cool music that way. Well, anyway, not too long later, Metallica sued Napster. Why do you think Metallica sued Napster?
Because they weren't making money off their music.
They weren't making money off their music. So what it could be, what's her name? Naomi, you could go buy Metallica's CD, rip the audio off into an MP3, put it onto Napster, and now everybody in the world can get that for free, and Metallica's not getting their money. So who's being greedy here? The consumer who wants the music for free, or the artist who wants to get paid for their art? The consumer who wants stuff for free is the greedy person. The person who created the art wants their own stuff. Now, I'm a big Metallica fan, so I know the biography pretty well. They didn't grow up rich or anything like that. They made their music and made their money through their music. They deserve every penny of it. I don't care if you're wealthy or poor. If you make money, or if you create something that people are willing to pay for, you deserve every penny of that. Metallica does donate a lot of their time and money to different charities or organizations and things like that, so it's not like they're fully greedy. They do a lot of that stuff, but they deserve their money. So, guess who won the lawsuit? Metallica won the lawsuit. And so there's a whole group of people out there that are like, F you, Metallica, you suck, and you sold out, blah, blah, blah. Well, Lars Ulrich, who's the drummer, whenever people tell him he sold out, he says, I sell out every night. That's what he says. And he's right for it, and he's not wrong. And it might sound cocky, but he should be proud of his work and his accomplishments because he did it. And he earned every penny of that, and he raises his family and does a lot of stuff for other people through his money. It's not just for him. Yeah, he's a very wealthy guy. Some people say he's kind of a jerk, but okay, fine. Everybody can be a jerk. Interesting, huh? So after Napster starts, kind of falls apart, and then eventually, they fall apart, and then they regroup themselves, and then eventually they turn into the first paid downloading service, kind of like what we have in Apple Music today. But I don't think Napster's around anymore. That's why I asked, because I haven't seen anybody talk about it. So then a little bit later, we have something called Groove Shark. You guys heard of Groove Shark? You guys know anything about Groove Shark? So Groove Shark was kind of similar to Napster, but I think they were kind of doing a free thing too, but there was something where they were paying what's called ASCAP fees. You have all these artists under here, they're creating all this music, and all this music through these record companies go into this thing that's an umbrella organization called ASCAP. I can't remember what the ASCAP stands for. It's like ASCAP. I can't remember what all that stands for. But basically what this organization does is, the way I look at it is kind of like a law firm. They check on every club, like bar, club, concert hall, any place where music is played, radios, they do this for radios, and they charge all of these places a certain amount of money so that they can have access to a certain amount of songs so they can play on their platform. So ASCAP sued Grooveshark because Grooveshark wasn't paying their fees, and it put Grooveshark out of business. Grooveshark, interestingly enough, was invented by a guy I went to school with at the University of Florida. I never met the guy, but I knew people that knew the guy, and unfortunately a few years later when he was in his 30s, he passed away. I don't remember what happened to him, but because of Napster and then getting into Grooveshark, all these other things started happening. I can't remember the order of what the first streaming services were, but like iHeartMusic, Spotify, Apple Music kind of happened to, well, I don't know, Apple Music kind of does their own thing, but all these services started, Pandora, all these things started coming out of that, and now you guys get to listen to all the music you want to listen to if you are willing to pay for these services or deal with ads, and now you understand a little bit of the structure of like how people get paid. Okay? I think that kind of answers that, but we could move on to another topic because we don't have to spend forever on that. Any other questions about that topic?
I was just curious because you can go on YouTube and listen to music pretty much for free, and not just like on the creator's channel, but like on the playlist and stuff. And I was wondering, how do they make money off of that?
Okay, so, well, YouTube runs ads, right? So YouTube runs ads, so those people who buy the ads pay YouTube. And then YouTube uses that money to pay the people who create the content. I'm a content creator on YouTube. Google sends me a check every 2 months. I'm not going to disclose. It's not a whole lot. I'm not like a big, rich, famous person or anything, but like I'm a music educator, so I have a lot of music education videos on there. Actually, you have my business card. A couple of you guys walked in late, so if you see me, I'll give you a card before you leave. But you can go to my YouTube and check it out. Like a lot of my stuff is like even from like 15 years ago to some of it. I don't really have any new stuff recently, and some of it's music where I'm playing in bands. Some of it's educational stuff. I'm not telling you that you should do this, but if you're curious about learning more about this, I'm telling you about it now. I remember when YouTube first became a thing, and the way I looked at it originally was, oh, this is cool. I could like teach my classes and record them and put them on YouTube, and then my students can look at it later and watch it at home. This was a new thing for us. I was like, and it was free for me. I didn't have to pay anybody to do this. If I was willing to work and knew how to upload it, it was cool. So I was like, all right, great. So I started doing it. Not too long later, I swear, not too long later, it was probably months later, I get a random email from some teacher in China. I'm not joking with you. I'm not making this up. And this teacher in China was like, hey, thank you so much for uploading all these videos about the stuff that you're doing in the United States. We don't get much of this around here, and this is really great. Thank you so much. We'll keep looking at your stuff. I don't know anything about the teacher. I don't know anything about the school, but I was like, wow, thank you so much. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed. And that was pretty much my response because I didn't really know what else to say about it. And then I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, this opens up a whole door of things. Not only is my way of educating people local to me, and they can bring it home to their personal computer or wherever they like to look up their YouTube videos, anybody in the world can look up my stuff. Another story that's kind of a similar way to show you how real this stuff is, I got a new student maybe about 10 years ago. I've been teaching for 20 years at my music school, so it was about 10 years ago. I had somebody from, I'm trying to remember what country he was from. I think it was somewhere in Europe. Maybe Dutch or something like that. So he gets to Gainesville, because I guess he was going to the University of Florida, and he calls me up and he's like, hey, I want to sign up for lessons with you. And I was like, all right, cool. So anyway, we get into the first lesson, and I was like, all right, cool. Hey, how did you hear about me? Because I know you're international. And he's like, oh, I started watching your YouTubes back in wherever he's from, Belgium or wherever he's from. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I remembered who you were, and then I saw you were in Gainesville and I'm going to school at UF. I was like, wow, isn't that neat? Think about that, guys. Isn't that neat? Now, I'm not comparing myself to Justin Bieber. I'm just telling stories here. But if you guys know anything about Justin Bieber, nobody knew who he was. He wasn't trying to be famous. He wasn't trying to write music to be famous or anything like that. Him and his mom just started making music on YouTube years ago. And then, oh, what's his name? Justin Timberlake saw him, contacted him, gave him a contract. And that's how Justin Bieber got his start. He was like 14 or 15 years old, or 16. He was really super young. So you got and I don't know Justin Bieber's background too much. I'm not like, I mean, I don't hate the guy, but I'm not a fan really. But I understand that he came from a kind of a poor family. They didn't have a whole lot. So imagine that you're a kid, and you guys aren't too far from that. Imagine you're 16 years old. Let's just say call it 16, and you get a call from Justin Bieber saying, "Hey, I saw your stuff. I really, really like it. I want to meet with you." What? These things happen. No joke. These things happen. And actually, these days, sorry if I'm calling, turn that over. I have some friends in the that are more famous in the music business that the way they get some. I'm just going to use this as an example because it's easy for me. So one of the bands I'm pretty close with is a band called Megadeth, and I'm closer friends with one of their former drummers, and the way he got his job with Megadeth, he's not with the band now, but he was with the band for 10 years, and when he was with the band, the way he got the job with the band is because he had some YouTube videos. So Dave Mustaine, who's the band leader of Megadeth, saw his YouTube videos, and he was looking for a drummer, but he didn't want to hire another celebrity, because celebrities are cocky, and they want to get paid a certain amount of money. So Dave Mustaine didn't want to pay a lot of money, and he didn't want somebody who was cocky, but he wanted somebody who was good. He saw this guy on the internet, so he hired this guy who was with the band for 10 years. Dave Mustaine ended up hiring his brother too at the same time, so he ended up playing lead guitar. So now you have two brothers playing guitar and drums with this major heavy metal band, all because of YouTube. Wow, right? All right, let's go on from there. We were talking about, okay, how do these people get paid? So I create content. I can decide as a content creator how I want my stuff to be monetized, and they do pay me for it. And there's different pay structures, and that you can read about it if you want to. It's kind of a lot. And they changed it recently, so I don't have all memorized. So they pay you based on mostly just views. It's not really clicks. They also analyze some other stuff, but I don't know fully what it is. I think they also analyze like if you click on an ad or how long you watch something, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there. YouTube is owned by Google, so there's all kinds of analytics. Okay, next question. Minji, Dr. Kim, about 10 more minutes? Is that right? About 10 more minutes?
20, up to 20, yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Right. Yeah.
What if some like third party, like me, were to record a bit of a song and then, or like a whole song and then make my own like lyric video or something like that on YouTube? But that's like the full high quality version of the song on my YouTube channel. Like people can listen to that and the creator's not getting money from that. So how does YouTube like regulate those?
I think I kind of understand what you're saying, but I'm going to correct you on some language.
Okay.
You're not a third party. You're the first party.
Okay.
You're the originator, right?
Yeah.
Because you're the songwriter.
No.
You're the person who created the thing.
No, if I take some like super popular song.
Oh, you take somebody else's stuff.
If I take somebody else's song, record it.
Well, now are you talking about taking their recording and then adding to it?
Yeah, taking their recording.
Or wait, hold on. I want to make sure I'm clear. Taking their stuff and adding to it, or re-recording it your own way? Which way are you thinking?
Literally just taking that audio, uploading it to my own channel. So it's just their song on my channel, and I type.
Okay,
out
if you don't have written permission from the original artist,
Yeah.
YouTube will flag it
Okay.
because they already know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what I'm sure there's a name for this, but they have some algorithm or something that will identify the song regardless of what you put on top of it.
Okay.
So if they do that, they'll flag it, and that doesn't mean they're going to fine you or you'll get in trouble or anything. That just means they're going to take it down, and they're going to tell you why, because you're using somebody else's stuff. But they'll tell you, but if you have written permission from the artist, will allow you to put it back up, but you have to have written permission.
Okay. Because I see a lot of those on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I've ran into that situation too, because I do what they call drum covers sometimes, where I play along with other people's songs, and then some songs nobody cares. You know, some artists don't care about it. Actually, some artists view it as actually this goes back to how artists. Actually, there's another thing on here. Okay, so Dr. Kim, this is sort of related to your sample question 2 that you put on here. So what the sample question 2 is why would some artists allow themselves to forsake some of their profit by publishing on SoundCloud or Spotify or one of these things? Why would they do that? Actually, that's a really great question. So what's your name? Joelle. Why would Joelle choose to, instead of just publishing it directly yourself and putting it on your own website, instead of doing that, record your stuff, and then let Apple Music sell it. Why would you do that?
To get my name out there, I don't know.
Yeah, because getting people attracted to your website to find your stuff is going to be a lot harder than it is to put it on Apple Music, where they have literally millions, if not billions, of people looking at that stuff every day. And you can pay for ads to have Apple Music promote your stuff. I see artists do this a lot. There's one girl out of California. She's really young. She's not too much older than you guys. She started, I discovered her a couple years ago. Can't remember her name at the moment. But she's really great. And so she bought an ad for like a month, like on all the social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, whatever people use, and directed people to her Apple Music. Well, there's always a sample of the music, so I clicked on it because I'm always curious about learning new music. So I clicked on it and I was like, she's really good. And it wasn't that expensive. It was like another $7, $10 to download her album or something, and I'm willing to pay that. And so I did, and I swear, I still listen to it really, really frequently now. It's been a few years. Now I understand she's doing world tour. Well, I don't know if she's world touring, but she's doing a lot of touring, and she's making money off of her music, whereas when she first made that CD, she wasn't, all because she had it on Apple Music. So you would put this stuff on Apple Music and be willing to let go of some of that profit because it promotes you at the same time. So you get two benefits. You get somebody, not a lot of money off your music, but you get put out there. So basically you can view them like an advertising firm. They're doing it for you, and you guys are all in PR stuff, right? PR marketing stuff, right? So that's a PR marketing thing. You may not know anything about music, but you know you can take an artist or a creator of some sort and help promote them through using your platforms, whatever platforms you use, whether it's print media, digital media, I don't know what else there is now, cross multimedia stuff between platforms, whatever people talk about now. Now we have metaverse. Does anybody know what metaverse is? All right, somebody tell me what they think metaverse is. It's not a trick question. I want to know what you guys think it is. I work at metaverse. Yeah.
It's like a new, basically like a new world in virtual reality where you can do basically just like anything you want, but in VR.
Yeah, that's thinking about it. You're right, but that's thinking about it in terms of more like video games. Think about real world stuff. Metaverse is basically, for example, especially during the pandemic. I don't know if you guys weren't in college at the time, but you guys were probably all in high school during the pandemic, right? So you guys had to take classes through online stuff, and for a lot of you guys it was probably kind of new, right? We call that online distance learning. That's what I study in my master's program, is online distance learning. So some classes were already doing this, but a lot of schools, this was totally new to them, especially for the teachers who didn't grow up this way and had to, bless you, who didn't understand the technologies out there and how to do this kind of stuff with students. There was a lot of issues. I mean, some of it was technology and making sure the students had the technology and the teachers had the technology and the schools had the technology. But then another thing was you had to change your whole curriculum based on an online environment, which is totally different than being in a class like this. Because in a class like this, I can look at you and you know I'm looking at you. But if you're just seeing me on a screen, you're just seeing me on a screen, but I can't necessarily see what you're doing unless we're doing Zoom or something and I see little squares of you everywhere. What was I getting at with that? So metaverse is kind of like, I'm going to use a cool example that, who knows who Elon Musk is? So I got to go to a seminar with him in Miami earlier this year. And it was a seminar on NFTs. Does anybody know what NFTs are? You guys are learning about that now? Non-fungible tokens? Okay. I'm not trying to get into all that. We can talk about that if you want to, but when I was listening to sorry, it was Mark Cuban. Did I say Elon Musk? No, I meant Mark Cuban. It was Mark Cuban. Do you guys know who Mark Cuban is? Okay. So he's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, but he's also really big into all this digital media stuff and cryptocurrency and NFTs and all that. He's also really interested in metaverse. So when he was on Shark Tank, do you guys know that show? There was one of the contestants, or whatever you call them, they came up with a way where they could create a virtual environment where potential employees and potential employers could interact in a virtual environment and work together virtually without employers having to spend resources on this and without employees having to spend any resources on anything. And it's also because it's an online environment. It's not like talking face to face with you and making you feel uncomfortable. It's a digital environment. And so in this environment, they have people practice little jobs, but in a virtual world, and you get graded And just like you would in a video game, you get scored certain ways, you get certain incentives for participating in the program. And so I downloaded the thing and started paying attention to it a little bit. It's very new, so it's not fully developed yet, but you can download, I can't remember what it's called. But what happens in this metaverse version of this thing is it's an opportunity for you and people you might work for to connect, even if you're not even in the same country. So instead of you having to fly to like England to go interview with somebody, you can do it virtually in the metaverse with like, it doesn't have to be like a Zoom call or a phone call or text messaging or something through social media. You can be in a virtual environment where you have an avatar. You guys know what an avatar is? Okay, a representation of yourself in the virtual environment where you can interact with a representation of whoever the other person is, and you guys can interact that way without having to take a plane and spending money on tickets and spending money on accommodations and food and all this kind of stuff. That's where metaverse is going. And also, in that metaverse, because there's virtual environments, there's already companies buying ads inside the so for example, Coca-Cola could buy an ad in this public space in the metaverse. And so as you and anybody else going through this whole part, they see that ad all the time, right? Just like you would on a TV commercial or a radio commercial or on print media or whatever. That's what metaverse is. So music is going into that direction too, which also ties into NFTs, which also ties into cryptocurrency. Yeah.
So, and I've seen this too with like the metaverse, and a bunch of like music artists are doing it, like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and maybe, I don't know if I don't understand it right, but they're buying like real estate in the metaverse. Is that what that is? I'm guessing those.
Yeah, but real estate is, I'm still learning about it myself too, but buying real estate means is they're buying their own stuff and creating their own things, and it's theirs. Kind of like buying a property that you're gonna build a house on. So I think it's all tied into the blockchain. So blockchains are created and then it gets assigned to people. I don't know exactly how all that works, and maybe I'm not explaining it correctly, and I don't want to pretend like I'm an expert. But basically what it is once you have your own thing, it's like a copyright. Nobody can infringe on it, nobody can touch it, nobody can do anything with it unless you give them some sort of permission. But you can let people rent it, which is kind of like what NFTs do. NFTs basically, if I wrote a song and instead of selling it to a record label, I could put it onto an NFT platform so I can allow any user, could be any one of you guys, to buy my song. But then you can have the song, but you could rent the rights out to that song to anybody else who wanted to use it, let's say for a commercial or for a TV show. These things happen all the time already, but not as NFTs. So, for example, I create a song, I sell it to Sony, Sony owns the song, and then TV shows buy it from Sony so they can use it for their TV shows or for radio broadcasting or commercials or whatever it is. But Sony still owns the rights to it. So that's what happens there. So NFTs kind of do that. So buying virtual real estate, it's kind of like that. They're making their own thing, doing their own thing, and then you can visit it, but you can't alter it, you can't change it, you can't do anything in it unless you do it according to whatever terms they said. You might have to sign a contract or pay a rental fee, or like think of it like going to the movie theater or going to a sporting event, you have to buy a ticket to go. Think about that. Think of it. I don't know if you guys have ever participated on this, but these big music artists, when they couldn't tour during the pandemic, did you notice that a lot of them started doing these virtual things? And then what they did is something I thought was super creative. They allowed everybody to put their own image inside of the concert through their own cameras too. So now it's not just the artist in a room in a studio performing to just people they don't see. They can actually see on screens like all the individual people that have logged into this thing. That is so cool. That's metaverse kind of stuff. Except, yeah, it's a real band on one side of the screen or whatever, and real people on the other side of the thing. But it's kind of like metaverse in that way, because if you took all that and it was all avatars, in fact, I think this already exists. I haven't looked into it yet, but they probably already have metaverse concerts where you got like a Maroon 5 as avatars in the metaverse, and then you have your own avatars, and you can probably interact with them virtually as if it was real life. But in a way, it kind of is like real life, because you're actually really interacting with them. But it's digital. It's not person to person. You can't shake their hand physically, but you can do it in the metaverse. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining this stuff really well. This is all really new stuff. Well, and I'm kind of old, so it's very new for me. Yeah.
So how Disney is like weaning out like lower middle class is.
I'm sorry, say that again?
How Disney is weaning out like lower middle classes by like raising their prices, is like the metaverse gonna be something that's for like people
have no way to answer that question. But do you really think that Disney's trying to do that? I don't know that.
Yeah, because.
I haven't heard anything about
I
that.
read an article, I think it was literally yesterday that I read it, that their plan is like failing about it, like, cause they were trying to subtly weed out everybody that's lower class. And
Well, think about it this way. I mean, I don't know anything about that, so I'm not going to say anything about Disney. But let's say you have let's say you're the owner of a really nice, fancy restaurant, and every plate's like $100. It's not a cheap place, maybe more than that, whatever. You know, really, really nice place. And I want to be careful how I talk about this. If you want a certain type of clientele to maintain a certain type of culture, and I'm not talking about race or religion or anything like that. I'm just talking, let's just call it economics. If you want people with a certain level of sort of like a way of handling themselves in terms of money and how they dress and how fancy they are or whatever it is, you're going to want to do things to try to make sure these other people don't get into that. So, actually, what is it called? Have you guys ever heard of the show called The Beverly Hillbillies? Is that the name of it? Yeah, it's really, really old. So here's the story. You have this really, really rural family. They're very, very, very poor. But oil is discovered where they live. So these oil companies came in, gave them like millions and millions and millions of dollars, so they moved to Beverly Hills. So they're very poorly educated. They never grew up with any sort of culture or anything outside of what they did in their own family. And now they're hanging out with all these like rich, fancy people and stuff. And so these rich, fancy people had a hard time with them because they're outside of their social circle, I guess. So I'm telling you that whole thing because this is actually not uncommon. A lot of businesses do this. A lot of businesses target specific people. Actually, this is related to your marketing stuff. Marketing targets specific people for specific goals. You don't just take, hey, I have an iPhone, and I don't know what it costs Apple to make this iPhone. I don't know. It could be like $50, or probably not even that. It's probably like $10 for them to make this thing, and I paid $1,000 for it. That's probably realistic. But what they're trying to do is keep the price so high that they can make that kind of profit that they want to make off of it, and also they want to have a certain image. They want to have a certain image. They're not trying to sell themselves as whoa, we're the cheap phone with the cheap plan. Well, I'll tell you a secret. Actually, I am doing this. I bought a really, really expensive phone, and I used to pay $250 a month for it because I had unlimited everything, and I'm a business person. And then I found out I could do the same thing on Boost for $50 a month. So guess what I did? Still got my $1,000 phone, but I'm spending $50 a month instead. But it's because I did some research to figure it out. So Disney might be doing a similar thing, but think about what happens in Disney. You have thousands and thousands of people that show up every day. They have very, very expensive, nice, fancy stuff in the whole park, and they want to keep it really, really, really super nice. Well, if they let people come in that let's say a bunch of rowdy teenagers, and they destroy stuff or whatever, that creates problems for everybody, and there's lawsuits and blah, 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 blah. But then also think about the pandemic. Now, I'm not going to get into politics about anything, but a part of the thing, and I'm not saying Disney's doing this, but theme parks in general want everybody to be healthy. So if they suspect that any certain demographic group might be unhealthier than other people, then they are going to do things to try to deter those people groups to come to the park because they don't want other people to get sick. Because if people get sick, then they can't make money off sick people. I don't know that's what Disney's doing, but it's not uncommon for businesses to target groups like this. Businesses will target particular races, particular religions, particular age groups, particular genders for very specific reasons. Like if I wanted to sell you specifically men's shaving cream, I'm not going to market to women unless you want to use it for your legs or whatever you want to use it for. But I'm going to market to men. That's a really easy example. If I want to sell you high heel shoes, I'm probably going to target certain types of people. If I'm selling shoes that are $5,000 a pair of shoes, I'm going to target people that can afford $5,000 a pair of shoes. I'm not going to target people who make $5,000 a month because they're probably not going to buy those shoes, right? Okay, how are we doing? Are we okay? Got 3 minutes? Okay, all right. I guess 1 or 2 more questions if we have time. I'll try to be a little shorter with the answers.
I was just wondering, in the metaverse, how do things actually have value? Because I remember I was reading this article, and sell, but like. I
Think
can't-
about it like in-game purchases. If you've ever played a video game and you have to buy in-game purchases, it's kind of like that. For your avatar, if you want really cool shoes for your avatar, you might have to buy it. Unless you know how to create it for yourself. But if you know how to create in your own avatar how to make a Nike brand shoe and Nike sees that, they can legally sue you because they own the copyright of the swoosh. Alright, yeah.
Going back to the artists getting paid and stuff, do you know how it works in like newer like platforms like social media? Like you have like TikTok, which has all like the TikTok sounds, and they have sounds that are like artist songs. Do you know how that works?
At this point, at right this very moment, don't know how TikTok does it, and that's actually on my
But
agenda.
like social media in general.
Well, every platform does things differently, but a lot of it's either ads. Well, at this point, a lot of these social media platforms are not asking you guys to pay for it, but they're making money somewhere, and a lot of it's through ads and through eyeballs. And also, don't think for a minute that if you see somebody dancing and they're wearing a certain type of clothes or whatever in the dance, and they're like, "Hey, you should buy this stuff. Here's the link," or whatever. Like everybody in that whole group is getting paid in some way. And for that to even happen, the artist or the content creator actually has to contribute some sort of value to the platform in some sort of way. And they do it through clicks and eyeballs, and then all these things feed a whole bunch of other things that are more complicated than I can tell you right now. And I think we're still learning about it because a lot of these social media groups are actually still trying to figure it out for themselves. But what they do notice is one thing, and I guess I could leave you with this. People these days have a much shorter attention span, and you have only about 5 or 10 seconds to catch their attention than ever before. And you want to carry that with you, and I don't know how that's going to carry into the future because I don't know how much shorter we can get. But think about this: when I first started listening to music, it was really normal to have like 5 or 7 or 8 minute songs on the radio. And today, your average song is probably about 2 or 3 minutes long because people want to listen to something, get the hook, and then move on to the next thing. That's why you like reels. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. I don't like that one. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And then an hour later, you're like, gosh, I spent an hour on this? I do that. Because it's easy. And it's not a commitment. You can walk away at any time. All right, guys. Well, thank you for having me here, and thank you, Dr. Kim. If you don't have my card and you would like it, just come see me. Feel free to contact me about anything later if you would like to. I'm available to you. Bye, guys. Have a good day.